Welcome to the Brutus Monroe channel. And Collins here with this Love Grows Here simple card. Let's go over the products I used to create this card. Our new stamp set called Love Grows Here. This is a four-piece set. It has 4 images and 1 sentiment. It has 2 plants and a floral, potted flowers. We're going to use our Raven embossing powder, our embossing powder in Gilded, our embossing ink, and our Aqua pigment colors. So I have blue and orange. We have yellow green, magenta and copper. And then I use a little bit of turquoise and white to create this soft blue that you have behind our sentiment. So I mix everything here in my little palette. Now I recorded this video before we have our new palettes for our aqua pigments, but you'll see that palette in future videos. Alright, I have some water and a fine detail brush that I'll be using to color our images. Now most of our images I went ahead and stamped and embossed off screen, and I colored and cut. So I'll show you those in a moment. Now I have a little hexagon frame here, and I'm going to try to mimic a shelf my daughter has in her room. It's a hexagon with a gold with wooden strips, wooden boards. So I have a Not Your Mama's cardstock that I use to create my card base. And here's our little sentiment. I embossed it using the Gilded. There's the background I created using the little bit of turquoise and white aqua pigment. And I created a little frame with some border dies. So here are our images that I've stamped and colored off screen, and then I trimmed them out just so that we can save some time today. But I will color one on screen just so you can see how easy it is. So these were all stamped and embossed using our Raven ink, not Raven ink, our Raven embossing powder on aqua pigment watercolor paper. So I have one here that is plain that we will color on screen. For our finishing touches, I will have some of the sequins from our April inspiration box here, so I have those set to the side. So let's go ahead and before we get started, actually, I have our Farmhouse green cardstock, and I've cut 2 strips down to create our little wooden shelves for our big shelf, I guess. All right, so for our shelves, I want to add a little bit of this copper pigment to it, a little bit of the aqua pigment and copper to this little wood grain, and I want it to fall into the little grooves of the wood grain to accent the wood grain even more. So I'm going to go ahead and put this on, and I'm slapping it on. I'm not worried too much. I want it nice and heavy, and then I'm going to wipe off any extra because I want most of it to fall into the grooves of the wood grain. So there you have it. So I'm going to wipe off any of the extra, and then I'll set these aside to dry. They won't take very long. So now I'm going to bring in my little potted plant, and I'm going to use the same copper on the little pot. And I'm not worried about it pooling and drying in certain spots because we want that. It looks more textured and beautiful. Now we're going to paint our plant here, and I put the yellow green down first. Then I grab a little bit of the blue pigment, aqua pigment color. And I'm going to put that on the base of our plant, and then I'll cover it again with some more of the yellow green. So that gives some dimension to our plant. So I'm going to set our palette to the side, and we can start building our little shelf. And I'm going to work right on my card base. So first I'm going to put those little shelves, little wooden shelves in the big frame here. And off screen I went ahead and put these thin foam strips on the back of my frame here. But I forgot I needed to put my shelves in, so I'm peeling them back, adding a little barely art glue to adhere my little shelves in place. Then I'll just put a little barely art glue underneath the foam tape here, and that'll hold it in place. So if you're doing this, adhere your little wood slats first, and then add your foam tape. I got ahead of myself. This foam tape is new for me, and I'm not real fond of it because it's super sticky, which is great, but not when you're trying to remove the backing. It doesn't remove very easily. And it's just, it's all right. It's not the best. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and once I have this last little piece adhere, I will trim off the excess that's sticking out of my frame. And wipe off any excess glue that I may have left over as well. This is pretty simple. Just follow the sides and trim along. And now it looks similar to the frame she has in her room. Hers was gold with wooden shelves, but it gives you the same thing and just made it copper here. All right, so we're going to adhere our frame to our card panel. But before we do that, I'm putting a little bit of these foam strips behind the wooden slats we just put into our frame so it doesn't buckle right in the center. I can trim this little one down here. Then I'll remove the backing off of all of our foam strips and adhere this to our card base. Now we're keeping our card pretty simple here. I'm not putting any other layers behind this frame. There's a lot going on, so I didn't want to, excuse me, put anything behind it. I wanted the focal point to really shine here. All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and adhere this to the center of our card panel. Not our card panel, our card base. I just said I'm not putting a card panel in. All right, so there it is on our card base. Press it in place, and now we can start placing all of our little images onto our frame. So I'm putting a little bit of foam adhesive behind some of the pieces as we go so that they stay up on and even with our frame. We're going to start with our sentiment first, and then we'll put our florals next to that, and then our potted plants on the bottom. So as you can see, I put some on 3 sides of it, and then I'm going to put a little bit of glue on the bottom here so that it looks like it's sitting on our shelf. Once I have that, I can go ahead and put our little plants, one on each side here. I'll just put a little bit of foam tape on the top because the little pots will be glued to the little wooden shelf. I'm grabbing my tweezers because some of these are a little difficult to just get in there, and I don't want to move anything out of the way. I also put some of our sequins on that little frame. I don't know, you can tell on the top left corner, just a little accent on there. Here's me fighting with the backing again of the foam tape. Get this on. I need to put a little bit of burly art on, like I said again, on our little pots. And now what's left is to put our plants on the bottom. I'm going to use the 2 taller ones on the ends, and then this thicker plant, the bigger of the 2 of the plants in the center. Once I have a plant stuck to my hand. Okay, once I put this last pot, we're almost done with our card. Now you can leave your card here at this point, but I want to add some finishing touches. I'm going to add our sequins, and I'm going to add some splatter. So I'm going to go ahead and add 3 drops of Barely Art glue on the bottom left and 2 at the top right, and I'll add our little sequins. And I'm sorry I'm a bit off screen here. I'll move up here in a second so you can see what I'm doing. Putting all of our extras, and here is our card. But I want to add a little splatter using the copper aqua pigment. So I'm going to add a drop or 2 into my little well here of my palette. I'm going to grab my brush. I'm going to water it quite a bit down, and then I'm just going to splatter all around our card. And if some falls on our sentiment and our frame, that's fine. It all blends beautifully together. And our card is now done. It went pretty quick and easy, though I think the longest part of it was fussy cutting the little images, but they're pretty easy to do. So again, we use our embossing powder in Gilded and in Raven, our embossing ink, the Love Grows Here stamp set, And our aqua pigment in a variety of colors. We have white, turquoise, magenta, blue, yellow green, orange, and copper. But I will have everything listed in the description box below, along with links to the Brutus Monroe shop. Thank you so much for being here, and I hope you found some inspiration.